Hello, I'm Dr. Lil from the George Washington University.
And I'm Dr. Weiss from Georgetown University.
We're here today to tell you all about periodical cicadas. We're both scientists who study insects, which have fascinated us since we were kids. A scientist who studies insects is called an entomologist.
We're here to tell you about an amazing thing that will be happening in our area this spring and summer. Millions and millions of cicadas will be making a dramatic appearance, an event which occurs only once every 17 years. After hearing our presentation, we hope that you will be just as excited as we are to greet them and share what you know about them with your family and friends. And then you too can be a friend to cicadas.
Cicadas are insects, animals that have 6 legs and 3 body regions, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. The head contains 2 large compound eyes, 3 smaller simple eyes, a pair of small antennae, and a long tubular mouth that I will describe a little later. The thorax is the middle region where all 6 legs and both pairs of wings attach and contains all of the muscles needed for both flight and locomotion. The last region is the abdomen, which contains many of the insect's internal organs, including those for digesting food and for reproduction. Cicadas are related to many common insects you might see in your garden or schoolyards, like the yellow aphids and the gray stink bug shown here. Across the world, there are more than 2,000 different species of cicadas. There are about 17 different species that live in our area. This green and black insect is a common cicada that many of you might recognize. Some adults are found every year, so they are called annual cicadas, and their loud calls are typically heard in wooded areas on hot summer days, giving them the common name dog day cicadas. Cicadas can be gently handled. They cannot bite or sting you. If you pick one up, their feet might tickle your hands. They might buzz a little in alarm, but that won't hurt you either. Cicadas are clumsy. They might bump into you, but that won't hurt you. We are so lucky that we happen to live in the only place in the world that periodical cicadas can be found. Periodical cicadas are a very special type of cicada where the adults appear only once every 13 or every 17 years. But when they do, there are billions of them. The ones in our areas are called brood 10, written as brood X because a capital X is the Roman numeral for 10. Let's compare the periodical cicadas to the more common dog day cicadas that you may be more familiar with. First of all, you can see that they are different colors. Periodical cicadas are black and orange with bright red eyes, which is very different from the large green and black dog day cicadas. The immature stages of periodical cicadas, which are called nymphs, require either 13 or 17 years of growth in order to complete developing, whereas the nymphs of the dog day cicadas develop more quickly in about 3 to 5 years. Periodical cicadas emerge all at once, synchronously, in the spring, whereas dog day cicadas emerge asynchronously throughout the summer. Finally, one of the biggest differences is that we only see periodical cicadas during the rare emergence years when there are billions to be found. Dog day cicadas can be found in much smaller numbers every year. Before we jump in, you may hear some people incorrectly refer to the periodical cicadas as locusts. Locusts are actually a type of grasshopper that also can be found in huge swarms. Let's compare them. You can see that the two insects look pretty different. Cicadas are part of a group of insects known as true bugs, whose mouth parts are modified into long tube used for piercing and sucking out liquid food from either plants or animals. Cicadas also have clear see-through wings. They feed underground on the plant sap of trees. Locusts, on the other hand, are actually a type of grasshopper with mouths that are designed for chewing the leaves and stems of plants. When locusts occur in large swarms, they can destroy the crops of farmers, but cicadas do not feed on crops, so are not considered a pest at all. This is a map showing the eastern half of the United States. Each color represents a brood of periodical cicadas. A brood is a group of cicadas that emerges all at the same time every 13 or every 17 years. Brood 10 is the largest of all the periodical cicada broods, known as the Great Eastern Brood, shown in yellow on the map. If you look closely at the legend, you can see that Brood 10 lists 2021 as the next emergence year. The white circle shows the part of Brood 10 that occurs in our area, which includes most of Maryland, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Southern Pennsylvania. Zooming in, this is a local map of where Brood 10 cicadas are likely to be found in our region. The counties that are colored purple had periodical cicadas during past emergences, but cicadas are kind of patchy. There might be millions in one neighborhood and very few in another. The best way to find out whether they will occur where you live is to ask an adult who has lived there for a long time if they remember them emerging. If cicadas were there during the last emergence, chances are they will be there again this year. Which of these different habitats do you think might have cicadas? Cicadas are primarily found in forested areas and cannot live in grasslands or areas that have been converted to agriculture or in areas with a lot of concrete instead of soil like this parking lot. They can be found in some suburban areas, but only where mature trees grow or have been planted. By planting trees in your neighborhood, you can encourage cicadas to move on in. There are 3 types of periodical cicadas in Brood 10 that all look pretty similar. All of them have red eyes and black and orange bodies. They're all in the same genus, Magus cicada. Magus is Latin for more or greater, referring to the large numbers that appear during the rare emergence events. To tell the species apart, you will need to pick them up and turn them over to look at their abdomens, the last body segment. Cicadas tend to be found in patches, so different species and different numbers of cicadas might change from place to place. See if you can tell which species are in your neighborhood by looking at those abdomens. This painting shows the life cycle of the periodical cicadas. Starting underground, where the fully grown cicadas nymphs are right now, the nymphs will emerge from the soil, crawl up the trunks of trees, and then molt for the very last time into the adult cicadas, which have wings. They will fly up to the trees where the males will begin to sing to attract females for mating. After mating, the female cicadas will lay their eggs in small branches, completing their mission. By June, most of the adult cicadas will have died and the big loud show is mostly over. However, hidden in the twigs, the eggs are developing, and by early August, they will begin to hatch, and millions of tiny nymphs will drop to the ground, burrow into the soil, where they will find a small root to feed on. They'll stay underground for another 17 years, which means we won't see them again until 2038. Cicada nymphs have only 3 life stages: the egg, the nymph, and the adult. After the eggs hatch later this summer, the tiny first instar nymphs drop to the ground and burrow into the soil. Once underground, each cicada nymph makes itself a little chamber in the soil and sucks sap from plant roots that pass through its chamber. The nymphs will molt 4 times, getting larger and larger, and they may move around a little bit to find a new root. During this whole time, they're alone in their chambers and don't interact with other cicadas. Finally, the fully grown nymph emerges from the soil and molts for the last time above ground into an adult. That is the amazing thing that we will see this spring. Although they lack wings, the nymphs look a lot like the adults in most respects. So the transition from the last nymph stage to the adult is called incomplete metamorphosis. This is a little bit different from another type of life cycle called complete metamorphosis that is typical of a butterfly or a ladybug, something you may have learned about already in school. This type of life cycle is called complete metamorphosis because there's a dramatic, almost complete change between the larva and the adult that occurs during an extra stage, the pupa, also called a chrysalis for butterflies. So just to recap, cicadas have 3 life stages, whereas some other insects like butterflies and ladybugs have 4 life stages. One of the most interesting things about periodical cicadas is their incredibly long lifespan. If the whole circle here, shown in orange, is 17 years, you can see that for almost all of the 17 years that periodical cicadas are alive, they're in the nymph stage, underground and out of sight, slowly growing. The tiny slivers of blue and red indicate the amount of time that they will spend as adults and as eggs. We estimate that almost 99% of their long 17-year lifespan is spent in the nymph stage. Periodical cicadas are among the longest living insects found anywhere in the world. In fact, the ones that will emerge this spring are older than you are. Cicadas are herbivores, which means that they eat plants, but instead of chewing on leaves, they drink plant sap. Their mouth is like a straw that pokes into and sucks up fluids from the underground roots of plants. Because the plants' fluids that they feed on are mostly water and not very nutritious, cicadas depend on special bacteria that live inside their bodies to provide other nutrients that they need in order to grow. These bacteria are so important that they are included inside every egg that a mother cicada lays so that her children will get the food that they need. Cicadas do almost all of their feeding and growing underground, which is where they are right now. The fully grown nymphs are currently living about 8 to 12 inches below the soil surface in chambers that are like little caves, but they will soon emerge. Right now, this is exactly what they look like. And on the picture on the right, you can even see the mouth parts really clearly. Cicada nymphs will use their special front legs to dig a long tunnel to the soil surface. Some cicadas build a turret, a small chimney-like tower made out of dried mud above the surface of the soil. When they emerge from the soil, they will climb a vertical surface like a tree trunk or a fence to find a place to molt and transform into the adult. Cicada nymphs will emerge on a warm spring night after the soil temperature underground reaches 18 degrees Celsius, which is about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll start to see the holes or turrets a couple of weeks before the cicadas emerge. Insects wear their exoskeletons on the outsides of their bodies like a suit of armor. An insect must shed its exoskeleton in order to grow bigger. The process of shedding the old exoskeleton is called molting. Cicada nymphs, which do not have wings, will molt 4 times while in their underground chambers. But the final molt, which is when the winged adults will first appear, occurs above ground and leaves behind an empty exoskeleton. The picture on the left was taken at night during this final molt. You can see the wings just beginning to expand. The middle picture is what the adult looks like after it has completed molting. It is very soft and white, but by morning it'll begin to darken and its colors will begin to appear. It takes about 6 days until the adults are fully hardened.
Once the adult cicadas are out and above ground, they get down to the business of courtship and mating. One thing you'll notice right away is that cicadas are loud. The males produce a tremendous buzzing song to attract and impress female cicadas. They make the noise by vibrating tymbals, which are special ribbed membranes on their abdomens, 300 to 400 times a second. A group of many males singing together is called a chorus. In our area, people schedule their outdoor weddings to avoid having to compete with the cicadas to be heard. If a female cicada hears a male that she likes, she will respond with a clicking noise made by flicking her wings to signal her interest, and the male will follow. Female cicadas mate only once, while males can mate many times. You may see pairs of mating cicadas joined at the abdomens. Once a male and female cicada have mated, usually at a chorus site, the female flies off and lays hundreds of eggs in the twigs of a tree to start the next generation. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between a male and a female by looking at the ends of their abdomens. Females have a pointy ovipositor or egg-laying structure, which you can see in the picture on the bottom right. Males, in contrast, have a much blunter abdomen. After they have mated, female cicadas use their sharp ovipositors to saw slits into slender twigs on trees. They prefer twigs about the diameter of a pencil, and they insert about 20 eggs into each slit. Each female can make multiple slits, laying up to several hundred eggs. Leaves on those twigs usually die, causing flagging on the trees, which you can see in the picture on the right side of the slide. In the painting on the top left, you can see the female's ovipositor inserted into a twig, and if you look carefully, you can see 3 nests of eggs that she has already laid. The eggs hatch about 6 weeks after they are laid, around early August, and tiny nymphs about the size of a grain of rice drop to the ground to burrow into the soil and find a root to attach to. They aren't injured in the fall because they are so small. They look like little white ants. These cicadas will stay underground alone in small chambers in the soil, drinking the fluid from tree roots for 17 more years. We'll see them again as adults in 2038. Who eats cicadas? The emergence of brood 10 provides a huge feast for many animals, including birds, squirrels, rats, mice, fishes, raccoons, possums, cats, and dogs. When the cicadas come out, many of these animals will ignore their regular foods and switch over to the new menu items, which are super abundant and easy to catch. Lots of other insects, such as wasps and ants, like eating cicadas too. You have to be a little careful though, because it's not good for your dog to eat too many. Humans also eat cicadas. People around the world have always eaten a variety of insects as good sources of protein. Several different groups of Native Americans have traditionally eaten cicadas both as a delicacy and as a survival food. Not only did they eat them when they emerged in huge numbers, they also dug up nymphs from the soil in non-emergence years. In 2004, when the cicadas last emerged here, some chefs in restaurants in DC put cicada dishes on their menus as a special local treat. I've made a variety of different cicada dishes, but my favorite is chocolate-covered roasted cicadas. Why the heck are there so many cicadas? Periodical cicadas emerge in very large numbers to ensure that some of them survive to mate and reproduce. Unlike other insects, which may be toxic or covered with hairs or have painful stings, cicadas have essentially no defenses except the male's loud calls, which can startle potential predators. As we just saw, many animals like to eat cicadas, but because the insects emerge all at once in such large numbers, the predators can't possibly eat all of them and the survivors can complete their life cycle. This strategy is called predator satiation. Cicada densities can range from 30,000 to 3,500,000 cicadas per hectare. A hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters, which is a little bit larger than a typical soccer field. One big question that a lot of people have is, how do cicadas tell time? How do they know when to crawl up out of the ground after exactly 17 years have passed? We know part, but not all, of the answer to that question. Because cicadas underground are tapped into the roots of trees, they can sense differences in the sap in the roots throughout the year and can count the seasonal pulses of sap. They emerge after 17 cycles have passed. We don't know exactly how they keep track of how many years have passed. They probably use some kind of molecular clock, but maybe one of you will become the entomologist who solves this mystery. An interesting experiment helped scientists to figure out just what the cicadas were counting. One year, when a late frost killed the leaves on some host plants, the trees had to produce a new flush of leaves, and scientists noticed that the cicadas feeding on those trees came out a year early. They had counted an extra year. Other scientists tested this hypothesis in a controlled experiment and got the same result. It's a good lesson in how much we can learn from keeping our eyes open to natural phenomena around us. You may see some cicadas that look kind of strange. The ends of their abdomens are broken off and they are filled with what looks like powder, but they can still fly around. Although they have no specialized predators, a particular fungus called Massospora cicadina has specialized as a parasite on periodical cicadas. It grows inside their bodies, filling their abdomens with powdery spores. And even though most of their abdomen may drop off, they can still fly around and spread the infection. Remember that their flight muscles are located in the thorax, which is not infected. Cicadas can infect one another through contact, helping the fungus to spread. And when the next generation goes underground, the spores will be waiting in the soil to infect the new adults when the nymphs climb out from underground 17 years later. What happens to all those dead cicadas? Many of the dead cicadas will be eaten by scavenging animals like raccoons, rodents, ants, and beetles. Those that aren't eaten will be broken down by water and decomposers, including fungi and bacteria, returning lots of nutrients to the soil. These nutrients will support growing plants and the baby cicadas feeding on their roots. And so the cycle of life continues.
Dr. Weiss and I would like to thank our partners on this project, Diane Lill of Audubon Natural Society and Zoe Getman Pickering of George Washington University for their help in putting this presentation together. To learn more, visit our website, www.friendtocicadas.org, to download our digital notebook, which is full of fun activities about cicadas, and to find information related to our upcoming Cicada Haiku contest. Thanks for being a friend to cicadas.